This is so cool. I use all this stuff. It's really cool. So I've had a lot of my musical dreams come true in my career, but perhaps one of the most exciting was the first time I recorded at Skywalker Ranch. And I'm sure you won't be surprised that when I walked in the door for my very first session, I did exactly what many of you would have done. I asked to immediately hold a lightsaber, which they actually obliged. Subsequently, I got to hold Indiana Jones's bullwhip. So they didn't need to pay me after that, but I still did cash the check. Okay, maybe I did. Okay, so now with a very special presentation, please welcome from Skywalker Ranch, Mr. Dennis the Wiz Leonard.
Dennis Leonard tribute speech, Dennis Q's video. Okay, I'm Analog. BT, great show so far, I really like it. I put everything on these cards, and in homage to John Cage, I should shuffle them and just randomize it. I was lucky enough to actually work with him. But what I was really lucky enough to have done over 35 years ago was meet John Meyer. And I've learned so much from John and watched John create Meyer Sound, which was something that he kind of backed into with the Grateful Dead pushing him a little bit because we wanted to push the envelope, and John had the wherewithal to push the envelope, and we had a good time. Some 30 years ago, I was running the Grateful Dead's fabrication shop, and we did outside things, and we got a contract with McCune Audio, which was one of the first places John designed things. And I saw these boxes we were building, Jam 3s, and they were actually something I'd never seen before, which was a comprehensive approach to building a system. We, in the past, would engineer a system and decide on the crossovers, the equalizers, the amplifiers. But the sound guys still had the latitude to, let's try this crossover today, let's try this frequency today. And sometimes it was good and sometimes it wasn't. But what it did do is it took up a lot of time, just getting the box to work before you even EQ'd it for the room. And here were these Jam 3s. It was like a box, and there were wires that went into the cabinet from this electronic box, and it was all done. It was a comprehensive approach. And I thought, that's pretty cool. And fast forward, I think it was the 79, we had this film, Apocalypse Now, that was circulating, and John had built these subwoofers, really great subwoofers, because at the time movie theaters didn't have enough low frequency, and Francis and Walter and the people from Apocalypse wanted the room to shake. And everybody knows how legendary that film was. Well, after the film, there were these great speakers left. And the Dead had closed Winterland the New Year's of '78. And we started to think about what we're going to do. And we went over to Oakland Auditorium, which is now Henry Kaiser, closed, unfortunately. And everybody in the Bay Area that had ever done anything in live sound got together in September to put together this crazy arcane system. It was impractical as hell. We had vacuum tube amps. We spent 2 days putting the system in. Unheard of. Like now you go in and you do build and show. And John showed up, everybody showed up. Don Pearson, God bless him, was there. We time-aligned the system, and we had this experience that was unbelievable, and this group formed that all loved sound, and John was kind of at the center of it. Fast forward a little bit further, and one evening, and I was lucky enough to build the first Ultra monitor, the first product of Meyer Sound. The prototype box, and we got called down to the Warfield Theater, and there was this box on the stage. It was kind of crude, but totally functional. And I don't know who got to hear it first, but I walked up to the box and stood there, and John was off stage right, and he spoke to me. And he knew the visceral reaction I was going to have, because I looked over and there was this Cheshire cat grin on his face, because he knew, I'd never heard anything like that before. It sounded so real. I looked down at the box and it's John, but it's bigger. It would have to be a John head this big to be that loud. It was natural. It was something that we had never heard before. The Starship were the first band to use them, and in fact, they had gotten so used to working with old school that we had to add DDLs and other things into the monitor mix in order for them to continue to feel like that previously they'd been harmonizing with the distortion in the system, and now there was no distortion at all. And what I'm getting at is, I think for John, it's all about passion. I think John approaches everything with unbridled passion. I remember having a conversation with him over at Meyer Sound about eliminating bottled water and getting filters for the water. And here's a guy, he's a sound guy, but John immediately knew everything about filtering water, absolutely everything. And that's the way he is. It's not just about sound. There are so many ancillary things that float around in his head. It's a little scary, but he is incredible. And one of the things that I've learned, and it was also handed down from Bear, Owsley Stanley, the famous guy that was the benefactor and beginning of System, yes, I am experienced. Never be satisfied with status quo. And I've seen it happen, okay, yeah, it's done, but gee, we could have done this. Well, guess what? The we could have done this is the next part of the project, and it keeps going on and on and on. This constant quest to make it better. If you can, you absolutely have to. And, thank you, because that is the greatest gift you've given me. And there are just so many products out there now, and one of the things that I'm really fortunate to have been a part of is the development of cinema products, which has happened in the last few years. That's the world BT mentioned. I live at Skywalker Sound. I listen to Meyer Sound products absolutely every day in my room. Thank you. And now we're in the cinema world. So John Meyer, please come up here. Thank you so much for everything you've done.
Well, thank you. I have a few minutes, a few things that I'll talk about kind of for going through this. I grew up in this industry. I was in radio and television as a kid. I mean, in the 50s, my uncle was head of Walt Disney Sound, so I'd go down and watch the Mouseketeers. And I love the technical part. When I was 12, I got my FCC third-class license so I could run programs on the radio station, FM station. A couple years later, I got my second class, which was quite a difficult test to take. They don't do it anymore, but you could repair transmitters with this license. And the FCC didn't believe it, and they came out to interview me because they didn't believe that I think 13 or 14 you could memorize this test and pass it and actually work on a television transmitter. But from radio and television I had acting programs and things. I have a good memory, so memorizing a book only took me a summer, but I could draw out any oscillator circuit and things like that. But what I learned in television and radio, it's all about the performance. I mean, people work really, really hard. They practice all day. It's one of the things why I didn't want to become an actor. They work really hard. They get all the fame, no question, and they get all the articles. And we're in the background in audio, so we don't generally get much recognition. Sometimes someone will say, well, thanks to, I better watch my time. I'm not known to do short speeches. The technical people, sometimes they'll say, well, thanks to the sound crew or something like that, which happens about once a year if you're lucky. So how do you develop passion? I mean, we don't want it to become a nation that's starting to happen. I mean, since Target went public on the fact that they were going to spend, I think, $5 billion, there's a documentary about it, on upping their image. They didn't up their technology of the store. They just upped their image so people feel better going there. And this is kind of frightening in a way where is it really going to be mediocrity, that it's well polished and sold well? Is that really what we want as a society? So you think about young people that go into our industry and they work really, really, really hard, and sometimes they get awarded, sometimes they get recognized, sometimes they don't. How do you stay through this? It's difficult. You don't get much support until it's popular, and then everybody wants to copy it, things like that. So it's a struggle. It's a push. It's really, really hard. And then the other thing that's very tempting to do, which is very dangerous, is to actually talk about your ideas publicly that you want to achieve. Leonard da Vinci did this, 500-600 years ago with his helicopter. It took another 500-600 years to build it, actually. I'm glad I didn't invest in it then, you know. So the idea of what we call notions in science, and when you talk about science, you get notions. And the best thing you can do with a notion is test it. Because every time you talk about a notion, you get more attached to it than you did before you told anybody. The more people you tell, the more attached you get, and then you get defensive about it, even though it might not work. And then after a while, you want to sell it because you want to recover some money, even though the thing might not work. So this is a very, very dangerous path. And I think in high school, hopefully you've learned this, you know, so it's something you want to kind of get out of your system when you're young. And you know, because if you make people into objects and trick them into believing that you know something when you really don't, when they figure it out, they will not be your friend. Ever. You may never get them back. So one of the things that I've always wanted to do is build a speaker that could project sound far, far in the distance, especially high frequencies. It's a very, very difficult problem. So my son helping me comes from the math side of the world, and I come from the engineering side. So he helped me put together a team of people, scientists, PhDs, people from that abstract science world where they see things mathematically, and we put an engineering team together, but we kept it secret to see if we could find a way of projecting high frequencies. We started this 8 years ago. And for 5 years, we finally started getting some breakthroughs. Now, we may have never got any breakthroughs, and so we could have buried the project because we only told people in-house, which leads to why I like patents. People ask me, why do we like patents? We like them because it gives us a reason not to talk about what we're working on. It's very tempting when your friends ask, what are you doing? You say, well, I really can't talk about it. We're patenting it, and that's kind of a good reason. They'll stop bugging you, you know, but... because you know, we don't know if we're going to be able to do this or not, and you just don't want to do it. And then when you do it, and we finally built this, we call it the Leo, we put it out there to make sure, does anybody care? You know, that you've built this thing. Is it usable? Is it something that the society wants? Which is always hard when you're pushing the envelope, you know. So I guess you don't want to push the envelope on everything, because you might disappear as a company. But so I think one of the things that, real quick, the reason I learned about notions, we were working on, we built analyzers, and we built very sophisticated analyzers, and we got called by the university in their wood division they got donated, they were going to get donated 1 million telephone poles, that they got the idea that maybe we could put these as sound barriers on the side of the road all along California. And they wanted to know if we wanted to help analyze to see if we could create a sound barrier. And I said, don't you think we should do a mile first to see if this works? Just for the heck of it, because otherwise we're going to have 1 million poles going up in California that might be annoyed if it doesn't do anything, you know. And so he says, yeah, that's really important. And he says, that's what I tell my students, test your notions before you get it too attached to these things. But unfortunately, it was 1 million poles or nothing, so the project died, you know, so which is one of those kind of strange things, like, you know, where people don't want you to test it, which is always, you know, not my nature. I don't like to gamble. I don't like that feeling of losing. So if I don't gamble, there's no risk. There's a huge risk if you gamble. Now, when it comes to awards, awards are exciting because they give another motive for people other than money. And the people that are only interested in money are not interested in anything I have to say. Because money is, people that just go after money are not interested in us who, after passion, trying to create things that everyone says, well, how's that, what kind of money will that make you? And you go, well, we don't know. And then they look at you like you're a moron, you know. And we probably are, you know, but like, you know, I love pushing the envelope and then working with people, especially like at Skywalker, where I come in with, let's do linear speakers, and they don't know what we're talking about. This is not a technical world, and we're from the technical world. So but they work with you, and as they learn what it is that you're trying to accomplish with it, they become allies for you. And this is really the only thing we really have if we're going to have a society where we're not just creating mediocrity and polishing it well through marketing. And I think the passion of doing things rather than, there's a risk of passion, and I was told a long time ago when I worked at McCune's, like, what happens if they don't like it? And I said, well, we'll probably feel bad. I don't, what do you want? You know, losing is always a bad feeling. So anyway, I think I've taken up my 2 minutes, but anyway, I want to thank my family who's put up with this quest, and my wife, who without her we would be living on an island somewhere because I'm not very social, and that's really true. I mean, I really would have barbed wire around the island, and you would not get there. But she's the social one. She makes contacts, and we have a company because of that. Otherwise, I'd have a lab somewhere, kind of not interested in help. So I wanted that, and I really appreciate this award. It's nice to be recognized. I understand when we've been up for awards where you don't get it. I know what that feels like. You just have to keep going. You know, I know it's difficult in these industries. They don't give enough awards to enough people. It's not the nature of the way it should be. But anyway, so I thank you, and I think that's my end. Thanks.